I'll never forget. I was watching the first episode of Downton Abbey, and my husband was on one couch and I was on the other, and it was just a really heavy time. 6 years of infertility is icky. It's just it takes a toll, and I just remember dropping to my knees and just sobbing and not being able to get the words out to my husband as to what had happened.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I'm staying here.
To whom else shall we go?
The Why I Stay podcast, where we find joy in staying in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm your host, Lindsay Clyde, and I want to ask you, why do you stay? Hello and welcome back to the Why I Stay podcast. Thank you for being with us. And we also want to have a huge thank you to Kamden Hainsworth for joining us today on this episode. Kamden, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks. I'm so happy to be here.
And if this is your first time, if it's not your first time, you're like, skip 30 seconds ahead. Right now, if it is your first time, welcome. And I'm going to tell you how this is going down. We've got rapid fire get to know you questions. We've got 3 exploratory questions for Kamden. And then we have the final question that everybody gets. Why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? So Kamden, are you ready for the rapid fires?
Let's do it. Yep,
Okay.
I am.
Here we go. Kamden, how old are you?
I'm 40.
Do you have any nicknames?
Yeah, my mom when I was little called me Bop Shoo Wop.
I love that.
All my cousins and close friends called me Cammy or Cam.
But, you know, it's only a mother's love. Bop Shoo Wop.
Bop Shoo Wop.
Where do you live?
I'm in Springville, Utah.
What's your favorite food?
A delicious carne asada burrito in San Diego,
Ooh,
close to the border.
there you go. I know. San Diego, you can't beat the Mexican there. Okay. What's your current hobby?
Oh, I just got my kids a piano for Christmas. And so I took piano when I was super little. I never developed it. I changed over to the guitar in college. And so now I am relearning how to play the piano, and it is so fun. It sounds not correct, but for me, it just sings to my soul.
What is your favorite calling you've ever held?
Teaching in general would probably be my favorite calling. I was a teacher by trade. I taught 6th grade. So teaching is like my happy place, but I teach gospel doctrine right now. I teach the adult Sunday school class, and I've been doing that, for about 3 years, and it has just filled me, and I feel like it fills our class, and we all come away so edified, and we know each other so much better by the end of class. So
yes.
There's something about that camaraderie and that sharing, that vulnerability that happens in our class that's really special.
What is a controversial opinion that you hold? Like, everybody loves Crocs, but you hate them.
I am fully embracing socks with sandals. I know that it's back in style, but as soon as I saw like Birkenstocks with cute, like chunky socks during the fall, fully embraced. My younger version of myself would totally be cringing, but I think that there's a place for them.
I love it. I love that it's a controversial opinion with yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
What is your biggest dream?
There's so many. I used to not dream at all. I had to learn how to dream. I just grew up where dreaming was painful because we didn't have a whole ton. And so living in practicality and living in the moment was where I found joy. I don't think that's bad, but since learning how to dream, I think my mind as an entrepreneur and as a coach honestly goes to reaching as many people as possible. Number one, to financially provide for my family, and a combined goal to be able to impact as many people with the message that I have possible. Because I really feel like when we understand ourselves, we understand our eternal nature. So I think that that's like an all-encompassing dream. And then I think on a more personal note, seeing my kids happy and safe is a dream that I think every parent would want, but specifically when you are in a home where you feel challenged every day of your life, you can only hope that what you're putting into your relationships with your kids will benefit them in the long run. And we know that we all have our agency, and that's fine. Heavenly Father is their father, and Heavenly Mother's their mother first, right? But I do have a dream, and I do dream and think about what will our adult family look like, and I hope that we get along well, and that there's peace and that there's joy in that place.
What is something about you that is the same now as it was when you were in high school?
I love people. I connected with a variety of different people in high school and didn't really know that that was maybe a gift or something that wasn't easy for many people. And everyone has a story, and I love hearing people's stories, and I love learning from their stories. And being involved a lot in a lot of different things in high school allowed me to touch a lot of different groups. And I feel like that hasn't stopped as well.
Okay, this is your bonus question. Okay, so we were talking about your hair before we went on air because I love it. What
I love
is a hairstyle that you've never tried that you would love to try?
Oh yeah, that's really easy.
Okay.
So I'd love to cut it super short and bleach it platinum
Mm,
and let it grow out the roots just a little bit and have some fun with the platinum look. I've never done that. I've done it super short. I've done a lot of like reds and browns and
mhm.
things, but I've never done the platinum, then the dyeing on top of that. So there you go.
Awesome. So this brings us to our exploratory questions. And the first one that we have for you is, what is a basic principle of the gospel of Jesus Christ that you have gained a testimony of recently? What experiences helped you gain it?
Awesome. So this is something that came to me in being a Sunday school teacher for the adults and going through my own faith journey. And it is a harmonious testimony. So you said a basic principle. So it'd be a bearing of testimonies would be the basic principle. What I have learned in refining my own testimony and truly looking at what it is that is mine and what's developing and all of that is this harmony between hope, belief, and knowledge. And I'm an ADHD coach, and I have ADHD. I've had it my whole life, but was just recently diagnosed. And one of the biggest challenges with people with ADHD is that we think non-linearly. So we think in 3D, we think in a dot to dot kind of motion, kind of like a 4D picture sometimes. And so taking what we can see and then putting it into a sentence that's very linear and very one word after another feels very challenging sometimes. And it feels very inadequate for what we're feeling. And so as I was approaching my testimony in this stage of my life, I just felt like, man, I wish I could speak in 3-part harmony. I
Mm,
wish that I could tell you not linearly, but in 3 different lines or 4 different lines or 5 different lines, what it is that I'm feeling, because they're layers on top of each other, like a cake you just bite into, right? You have each layer and they're all in your palate. They're all on your tongue at the same time. And we're forced in mortality right now to only sing or only say things line by line. And so I came up with this thought came to me rather, and that was that we don't have to know everything. That in order to gain perfect knowledge, and Alma 32 talks about this, that we have to just start with a hope, and that hope can grow into a belief. And that when we have enough experiences exercising that belief and exercising that hope, that it then may turn into knowledge. And so when I bear witness, I don't feel less than by saying, I believe, or I certainly hope with all of my soul that X, Y, or Z is true, is real, benefits us. And because I understand that when I say that, I'm not just speaking on one note. I'm speaking many notes of experience. And in order to get to knowledge, we often have to have hope, belief, knowledge, kind of all working together for our good. And that has changed a great deal with the taking away the shame and the guilt or the embarrassment of not knowing, but being okay. And in fact, being proud and excited for hoping.
That's really, really intriguing. I had never, being a linear thinker, I had never thought of it that way. And I mean, it seems really, what's the word? Plausible that our unlocked minds in the next life would be able to think and feel in more of a 4D experience. And so as you were saying that, my eyes started to go, oh, that sounds cool. Like that sounds really neat. And I know with ADHD, there's a lot of stigma around that. And there's a lot of difficulties that people who have ADHD run into in life just because the world is made to be linear and you don't fit in the box. So, you're the one who has a problem. But I wonder, and because there are so many people being diagnosed, I have this kind of like little hope in my or belief in the back of my mind that like God needs people with ADHD and autism more than ever in this last push at the end of the second coming, like the end of the world type thing. We're going to need those thinkers who think in these Rubik's Cube, ways. And I think it's really beautiful that you own the hope and you own the belief. It takes more courage to get up and hope and to believe than to know, right? And actually says that in the scriptures. It's once you know. There's no
you don't have to
anymore.
exercise faith. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's no work. And so I really love those concepts that you put together. And I think that the people who are listening who might have the same challenges or same experiences, or not even challenges, but like benefits, right, from having ADHD, will really appreciate what you just said, especially.
Well, and you just drove home the basic principle. It was faith. Essentially what we're talking about is how do we exercise faith, and that comes through hope, belief, that leads us to knowledge. And as we bear a testimony, whether that's first Sunday or just bearing testimony throughout life, we so search for that knowledge. And it not to sound too extreme, but it almost dishonors where our faith lies and how much we're having to exercise that. So thank you for reminding us that faith was that principle of the gospel.
And I guess the most important part is that our minds were veiled for a reason.
Yeah.
It would be nice to get to the no part, but I think that I'll get to the end of my life and I'll think, man, I hope this, on the other side of this, I just really hope and I believe. I don't know that I will know
until
it really comes up. Like, I think I'm going to have a really strong hope at that point. And that's what we're looking for here. So thank you for that. All right. So the second question we have for you is, when is a time that you had to go on faith because a prompting didn't make sense? What did you learn?
Two come to mind. So we'll see where this goes. But in 2019, I had been in an entrepreneurship position for about a year, and I'd been working it really, really hard. I had 3 kids at home. And I reached an intense burnout, but I didn't know it was burnout. This is all, looking back. But I didn't know what had happened. I've been a pretty highly functioning human my whole life, and this felt so different. I had gone through some hard things in the past, but this felt really, really different. And I was really committed to my entrepreneurship journey. And essentially, I took it to the temple and was prompted to look into ADHD, like to put it very simply. And then I was prompted to tell my story online. And I did not know that COVID was right around the corner. I didn't know that the pandemic, this was October 2019. And so bringing my story online to a whole bunch of people that were really struggling with mental health during COVID, not only helped me find my new career, but it also helped me connect with people again, right? And to a degree that I was really struggling with in my previous endeavors as an entrepreneur, I knew that I could have great influence on people's lives. It's something that I'd been promised and I had seen in my life before. And that really fills my cup to help people know that they are awesome and that they have worth. And I could have never anticipated that by putting a couple posts out on Instagram, and then I found TikTok and starting to share my story would explode the way that it did. And that felt very, very uncomfortable. I pretty much abandoned that, that previous venture and started brand new with something I knew nothing about, with something I really hadn't done in this fashion before, and having really no idea with what would come from it. And yet it has led me, like I said, a completely different path in my life. I was an elementary school teacher and I didn't know much about life coaching. I didn't know about ADHD coaching. My daughter had ADHD diagnosed. It's intensely impacted our relationship together for the good. And I think it's just the beginning. So that's something pretty current that didn't make sense. But I would really like to add a second one. And you can either keep them both or cut one out or whatever it might be.
Yeah, give it to me.
Yeah. My husband and I got married at 24 years old, and we didn't have our first until we were 30. And as the oldest of 7 kids, and as an elementary school teacher, I thought I'm a shoo-in for being a mom. It felt like it was very natural for me. I felt like I'd been a mother of sorts my whole life. And through years of infertility and doctor's appointments and lots of lost money, everything was very unsuccessful. And we had just found out that our IVF had failed when I received a phone call from a friend from my mission. And she let me know that a mutual friend of ours had an unplanned pregnancy and wanted to place her baby in our family, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in that. And I'll never forget, I was watching the first episode of Downton Abbey, and my husband was on one couch and I was on the other. And it was just a really heavy time. 6 years of infertility is icky. It takes a toll. And I just remember dropping to my knees and just sobbing and not being able to get the words out to my husband as to what had happened. And it wasn't a prompting per se, but there was a lot of hopelessness in those years of infertility. And we persevered, and we served in our callings. And there was like this perseverance that also happened while we were still really frustrated. And this starting of our family came in a way that I would have never anticipated. That, 5 or 6 years later, before 5 or 6 years previous, I was in my apartment in Minnesota on my mission, rooming with a companionship of English sisters, and that just on the other side of the wall, I'd be sharing motherhood with one of these incredible sister missionaries that I loved. And we have an incredible open adoption, and adoption is very hard. It's not always easy. It's not black and white. It's not any of that. But just that perseverance that the gospel provides, that asks of us, that endurance that it asks of us, truly benefited our family to begin and to prosper more than I could have ever imagined. And it wasn't 2 months after that adoption that we found out we were pregnant naturally. And now we have 4 daughters. And so it's kind of one of those fireworks types of stories. And interestingly enough, I don't share it a whole ton. I think because it is so fireworksy, and yet it is so personal and is so like it's where my faith is drawn from in many ways, are occurrences like that. And they're fireworks to me, and I want them to keep being fireworks. So the prompting to start a family and then it being answered in a very different way than we could have ever anticipated.
What I feel from both of those experiences you just shared is that your faith and your courage to go in a completely different direction, that in both circumstances, even though one was probably more concentrated in time than the other one, the thing that had beaten you down the most was the thing that gave you the courage to say yes to something completely new and completely unexpected. That you had been going down a path for so long that probably felt like hitting your head against the wall over and over and over, so that when the door next to it opened up, you knew and you were ready to just go like running through it with the ADHD and your coaching, and also with this amazing miraculous adoption and family story. And yeah, let's go back to that hope. So many people need hope. They just need a hero to keep fighting for their own story, thinking someday, even if I have to wait 6 more years, 8 more years, 20 more years, that could be my fireworks story. And we just have to not compare, and we just need to hold on fast and know that we can trust the Lord enough that no matter what he makes us go through, or that we choose to go through with him, that on the other side of it will be a miraculous fireworks story.
Yeah. I feel that. And I sometimes am hard on myself thinking back on who I was when we were gifted that adoption, because I was still very bitter. Like I was not on the other side of anger and frustration and bitterness. I would say to a degree, I still had very immature faith. However, to your point, when the second occasion came up, and I'm sure there were ones there were many in between that, as being having young kids as a mother. But when those challenging moments came, I was able to have more compassion and have more faith and have more trust, because even in my bitterness, God saw my efforts and he saw my faith, and he saw that I was just using fumes in that portion of my faith that I had to give, but I used the fumes. And so I knew I had more trust. My bucket of trust was more full when the challenges did come up, to say, yep, we're going down this door. I know it doesn't make any sense, but what a phrase that we have in our home is, God doesn't let us down. God does not let us down, ever. It's never happened. He has never let us down. And it's not trite. It comes, as I've shared, it's come from in a very deep rooted, basis and foundation. And it makes it a little bit easier, a little bit less stressful, a little bit less dramatic, when we can shift into that energy based upon what we have gone through.
So if there's anybody out there who is in the bitter stage and the tantrum throwing stage and the like, why shaking your fist at the heavens stage, just know that if you stay with him, there will come a point where you can use this and feel okay, at least a little bit more solid in the next trial that comes your way. And hopefully there's a little break in between.
Yeah, if it's not one, hopefully we're not Jobs or Jobettes.
Jobettes. Awesome. All right, let's do the third exploratory question. This one is, what is one experience that has really increased your maturity in the gospel?
Right about the same time that we were adopting our daughter and having this absolute revelation of God not forgetting us, and then even more so choosing to go to the temple and be sealed together as a family. which in and of itself was something very sacred. Uh, one of my siblings, uh, the first of my siblings decided to leave the church. And I was not prepared. I was angry. I was confused because we hadn't had to navigate this as a family before. Even in my extended family of my cousins, there were one or two who weren't members, or weren't active in the church, but I had never seen like a angry exit, if you will. And I didn't understand. I didn't have the maturity to navigate that experience. So as I began to see more friends and families, specifically during the time of COVID, and we had more information, and even like the sharing of that information online, I think just really increased in the last 10 years. I mean, it has. There's so many narratives to listen to. There came a point where I couldn't, in order to have a real relationship with my siblings who I love, but I mean, they're awesome. They're my favorite people. I had to be able to hear them and truly hear them, without defensiveness and without blame or pointing the finger. I had to truly sit with them and understand their struggles and understand their challenges and their pain and their hurt. And I feel like because of their willingness to share with me their experiences, it has given me the gift of coming to know my own reasons for my own testimony. My brother and I both have ADHD. In fact, many people in my family do. And when he left, it more recently, he and I had been through many of the same battles in our heart and in our body. And we had enough conversations, had been enough in the similar spaces that we kind of understood what we were navigating. And I told him that a visual came to mind, and that was that we were in this revolving door, and he and I were in different slots of the revolving door, and it kept moving around and around as we were looking at all of the different sides, if you will, one side and the other, and inside of the church and outside of the church, just to keep it simply. I know it's not so black and white. He exited on one side of the glass and I exited on the other. And so we looked at each other through this glass on both sides of this wall, if you can imagine, and understood each other and had compassion with each other because we had almost been where the other was just previously before that choice. And he wasn't any different than he was when we were going in the, in the spinning of those doors, and neither was I, but we made a choice. And I always tell my clients that you're the boss applesauce. Like, if you make a choice, you can change a choice. So a choice doesn't have to be for forever. And in making a choice, sometimes that's where we can finally start to grow. And so your original question for me was, what was a time when you have seen a maturing of your faith or your testimony? And I reflect back on that first sibling who I love, and her exit from the church. And then I looked how I dealt with it and how I held it for my brother. And I feel like it was a very different experience. And the only thing I think that can make that holy is the Savior and is his love. And how can he love us perfectly? It's because he takes the time in the revolving door to be there with us and to feel what we're feeling and to talk about what we've been through because he has experienced it. And I wish I could have been there better for my sister. And thankfully, we've had enough conversations since that we understand each other. I think we've both grown, honestly. It's really forced me to understand that. And what was very helpful, a helpful tool for me in that process, obviously, was the scriptures, obviously was falling on the Lord, falling upon God, falling upon my covenants and what I had known foundationally to be helpful. But it really helped me too when I heard about the Fowler stages of faith, which I don't know if you guys have talked about on this podcast before, but essentially Fowler studied faith, a variety of different faiths, and he saw that there were different stages, not a hierarchical level of stages, but that many people who develop faith go through these different stages of faith, whether it be in their life by their ages, or whether it be kind of bouncing back and forth through different stages of their life. But what I was experiencing finally had a name, and I wasn't afraid to ask questions because I was asking them holding God's hand. And I wasn't afraid to hear the struggles of my siblings and then make me be the one that has to fix, what doubts or what struggles they're having. That wasn't the point. All I had to do is to focus on what my faith was and hold space and love for my literal siblings, but also my siblings that have heavenly parents the same that I do.
That is it's so difficult for me because one, I'm a fixer, and two, I have this podcast, right? It's called Why I Stay. And so like honestly, if I could have the wish of my heart, I would have like Satan's tactic and go around and like, I mean, I would want all of them to decide on their own, but it's really hard for me. And my friends who are listening, who know me well, will laugh and say, yep, that's you. Like I am very much your younger self in the way that it's very hard for me to listen without immediately starting to like, okay, well, what, how can we fix this? Like anything, not even just leaving the church or leaving your covenants or whatever. I always want to fix. And so what you've said here today is really helpful for me. I'm definitely going to be thinking about this and asking God, holding his hand and asking him, how can I change this aspect of myself? Because it's not Christ-like in the sense that, well, I need to be more Christ-like and expanding my character and having my capacity to hold those things and be still increased. I need that to increase. And so I'm really grateful that you said that, because it's a struggle I have. And so I hope and I believe and I have faith that someday I'll be at least a little bit better than I am right now. So
well, and you're welcome. And I'm glad to take one for the team here because it is hard. But as a gospel doctrine teacher, I've seen that many of the prophets have also gone through this. So this is not unique to Kamden. It's not unique to the process of faith. First Nephi 7, Nephi is tied up by his brothers. He's getting so frustrated with them, right? And they're seeking his life. They tie him up. The Spirit comes and helps him have enough strength to burst, all of that. And then it says that he has to have his heart softened in order to not be upset with his brothers. And to me, something like the Lord softened my heart is what it says in the scripture. I can't find it right now, but the Lord softened my heart, which means that his heart was hard. Like he was getting frustrated with his brothers who essentially were kind of in the same conversation that we're talking about right now.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Can't you see, like we saw the angel together, like angels, plural, like it's the same kind of thing, specifically within siblings, right? Like, were you not there?
Yeah.
Like And for me, it was really, it hit a really tender chord because, like I mentioned, when my sister made her choices, it was the same time that we had just gotten our baby and we were going to the temple. And so we were like rejoicing in the miracles of God. And I couldn't share that with her because like I couldn't share in that with her the same way that we could have in past years. And that felt hard. And I had a hard heart, like my heart had to be softened as well. So I think it's in our human nature to want people to want to feel heard and to want to feel validated. And when we don't feel heard or validated on either side of that coin, then we put up walls because we don't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
And it's a safety, mechanism that we do. So you're not alone. I'm not alone. Nephi's not alone. It's our human nature. It's what we do after we recognize like, ugh, this is a challenge. This is hard for me. It's what we do with that afterward that makes a difference. How are we going to grow through this? And I can say complete honestly that it has helped my relationship with my siblings 1,000%, having to go through hard things together.
Okay. Yeah, it gives me hope. I think it's just probably a skill a lot of us need to learn right now. And there's a lot of people staying, which I love to highlight those stories. And there's a lot of people who we didn't think would leaving. And so this is a conversation that needs to continue. So I guess I would just say to the listeners, if you have somebody in your life that maybe you need to apologize to, or maybe you think that you don't need to apologize to, but you should, because that's what's going to open up your heart and soften your hearts together so you can make progress. I challenge you to go and do that. And I'm going to do the same. So thank you. Okay, that brings us to our final question. Are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ever ready for this question, but it's once again, if I could speak in harmonies, I'd be ready, but I'll do my best.
We're hearing it. We are hearing the harmonies. Here we go. Kamden, why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
This is where I choose to leave my legacy. I choose to stay because people have stayed before me and have given me the gift of starting my life off with the principles of the gospel that have been the springboard by which I have been able to make my own choices. And I see that as a gift. And if I can give my children everything that I've learned for them as a springboard to make their choices, I feel that hope and that light and that love and that vision and perspective is the best thing that I can give them. I have been so blessed as a coach to interact with people from all over the world. And they come with so much to teach me and so much perspective and life and understanding about beautiful parts of this life that I haven't even developed. And yet here is home. And here I can still find challenge and growth and connection with who I am at the core, who I've always been, with that eternal being that was created from a mother and a father and who will continue to live on. And when I give myself fully to the principles of the gospel, not just the scaffolding of the church, which is very important, but when I give my heart and I give my faith and my hope and my questions and my doubts and my what in the world's to God and to faith and to the scriptures and to prayer and to conversations like these, I feel more like Kamden. And I learn more about who I am and who you are and who my kids are, who my neighbors are. And I start to see people in a more what I consider true light of who they really are. And then it makes it easier to love them. And that's what Jesus Christ asked us to do, was to love each other. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a beautiful, almost magical place that could believe that angels and God himself could appear to a boy, could appear to people, could bring back truths. It's very magical. And I love believing in the magic. I love believing in the not knowing. I love exercising the faith because that's where I grow. That's where I am expanded. That's where my heart doesn't just rest. It's where it is guided and pushed and made more full and whole. And that's the kind of legacy that I hope to live. My home and my heart is here in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Kamden, thank you so much. We can see your light, we can feel your light, and I'm so grateful for the unique perspective you've brought to this podcast. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
The Why I Stay podcast is a faith-based podcast exploring the lives and experiences of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This podcast is not produced or endorsed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we do love that church. All rights reserved. And a great big shout out to Fast Sounds from Pixabay for the amazing and jammin' intro-outro music. Thanks, guys.